Welcome to Hoystory On Air, Season 2, Episode something in the low teens. It'll be right on the metadata when this gets posted various places. Thanks for joining me. It's been almost 2 weeks probably since I put one of these up. I've been putting up a lot of shorts. Those are short little videos that are less than 3 minutes long. I'd encourage you to check those out. You can find them on the Substack under the Notes section. You can find them on YouTube under Hoystory Shorts. Check them out. I've been trying to do more of those. Those get more viewership than this, probably because I'm long-winded and I talk a lot. People, short attention spans. So we're going to have a single subject thing today. I'm going to try to start keeping these as single subjects if I can until, I get enough people who want the longer things and I can chop them up. And so if you like longer ones, let me know. If you like shorter ones, let me know. And I'm gonna cater to you, the viewer. So today we're talking about the SAVE Act, voter ID to vote. I live here in California. ID is not required to vote. Do people trust what happens in California as far as its elections go? Democrats probably do. Republicans not so much. Again, because no ID is required. They can't ask you for one. I walk in, I say my name, and they look it up. Okay, but I could say somebody else's name and walk in there too. Doesn't provide a lot of confidence. Gallup has a poll on this, came out recently. Large majorities of Americans back photo ID laws. 84% of Americans back having all voters give photo ID at their voting place in order to vote. 83% back having people who are registering to vote for the first time provide proof of citizenship. 76% back early voting. I'm not as big a fan of early voting. I got bitten on that when I was younger. So I try to avoid it if at all possible. Back in 1992, I voted for Ross Perot. I had to do a absentee ballot because I was away at college and I was voting on my permanent home down in the San Diego area. And I voted for Ross Perot. And I voted like a month early, sent that in. And then a couple weeks before the election, he started to go crazy with black helicopters and George W. Bush was going to ruin his daughter's wedding. And it's like, at that point, I probably shouldn't have voted for him. So I'm not up with that. But this is an 80-20 issue. Again, that Democrats are largely on the wrong side of. Article continued. Majority of Americans favor a range of election law policies that expand voters' access, early voting, automatic voter registration. They also broadly support measures to limit fraud and ensure election integrity, including requiring photo identification to vote and providing proof of citizenship when first registering to vote. Yes. Yeah, but the thing is, this is, again, it's an 80-20 issue. Even among Democrats, it's a 70-30 issue at best. Yet, Democratic politicians, practically in lockstep, don't like this. Here's Chuck Schumer, the Senate Minority Leader, bill requiring proof of citizenship to vote, nothing more than Jim Crow 2.0. This is a phrase you've heard before if you followed this at all. Back in 2021, the state of Georgia made changes to its voting laws in order to largely restore confidence among Republicans in that state who thought the 2020 election was stolen. I personally don't believe that election was stolen. I don't think that Trump won Georgia in 2020. But I'll say this, the way Democrats are behaving gives me pause. This is nuts. So 2021, Georgia tightened up its election laws, set, rules for, when early voting could occur, required ID, all this other sort of stuff. And what happened? Well, other than the Major League Baseball pulling the All-Star game from Atlanta, protest, stay in your lane. What happened? This is an article from the MIT Election Lab. Effects of SB 202, that was the Jim Crow 2.0 law. Overall, Georgia voters reported a positive voting experience. Almost no voters reported issues of any kind. In terms of difficulty, almost all voters indicated casting a ballot in 2020 was easier or the same as casting a ballot in 2020. Voter confidence was up. An overwhelming majority of voters were confident their vote was counted as intended. Largest rebound in voter confidence, again, Republicans. You didn't have this mass voter disenfranchisement that Democrats keep on claiming. They talked with, these are LEOs, usually that's law enforcement officers, but here it's local election officials. LEO opinions concerning whether SB 202 improved election administration at the local levels were decidedly mixed. Most agree the state did provide adequate training. A plurality found the verification process for absentee ballots and absentee ballot applications faster. Plurality indicated the absentee ballot application verification process did not result in fewer rejections. Plurality of LEOs stated the shortened deadline to request an absentee ballot resulted in fewer problems. The vote counting reforms were generally well received by local election officials. And the thing is, as part of this, Georgia set up a system where if you didn't have an ID, we'll get you an ID. All sorts of rules, all sorts of ways that you could get an ID to vote. Did anyone, there may have been a case or two where somebody claimed they couldn't get an ID to vote. I heard about those. They turned out to be mostly bogus. But think about this from a practical standpoint. If you pass the SAVE Act, if it was required that you show ID and proof of citizenship to vote, Democrats say, millions will get disenfranchised. Well, the Democratic Party wouldn't, if these are their voters, and they believe they are, Democrats believe their voters would get disenfranchised by a system that required them to provide proof that they are a citizen and provide ID when they show up to cast a ballot. The Democratic Party would spend, and liberal foundations and all that other sort of stuff, would spend a ton of cash to get those people the IDs they needed. They'd send, when I graduated from college, my first job was at the Lompoc Record. Since that's where I was going to be living, that's where I was going to register to vote. And I distinctly remember being with my parents in the Walmart parking lot. They were buying me some, stuff that I needed for my first kind of apartment and whatnot. Stuff for the kitchen, pots, pans, that sort of thing. And there was a, few people out in the parking lot. Are you registered to vote? No, I'm not registered to vote. I need to vote. So, are you a Republican or a Democrat? I said, well, I'm a Republican. And it's unlike the other people where she'd helped them fill it out and all that other sort of stuff, she ripped off a blank one, handed it to me, and walked away. Democrats are all of a sudden not going to be helping people vote. Give me a break. They're going to make sure they can do everything they can. And the government should be doing that too. But Democrats think their voters are, frankly, morons. This is a video here from Al Velsh's show on MSN or MS Now with my own senator, Alex Padilla. Take a look and listen to this.
And what about this nonsense about providing citizenship proof every time you vote? Right? You guys do audit the voter rolls. So the point is, who's on it. You make adjustments. You audit. You throw people off and you put extra people on. This is not a thing. I mean, I literally talk about discouraging people from voting. Women who've changed their names that don't match their birth certificate. Their married name doesn't match their birth certificate. Their license doesn't match their birth certificate. This is nonsensical.
Right, absolutely nonsensical. I mean, to insist on bringing your birth certificate or a passport, a lot of Americans don't even have a passport because not everybody travels internationally. It's the equivalent of a show me your papers law to be able to exercise your fundamental constitutional right to vote. And who would be impacted? The SAVE Act may sound good in some quarters. One big example is what you just said. A woman who may choose to change her name when she gets married, all of a sudden her birth certificate name is different than her ID, and that becomes a problem. It's never been a problem. It isn't a problem. Or what about people who live in rural areas, have to make their way to a county courthouse to verify their registration when you're already working probably more than 8-10 hours a day just to make ends meet? It's not just an inconvenience. Members of the military, when they're deployed and they change from one base to another, have to go through hoops to update their registration to exercise their right to vote when they should be focusing on their core missions and our national security. Again, the SAVE Act is a solution in search of a problem. The only thing that's saved is Republican chances of holding on to power. That's how desperate they are.
Married ladies, you're morons. That's the message here. That's one of the messages here. My wife changed her name when she married me. She had her old ID and she has a marriage license that has both her old and new name on it. And she had to, I admit, she had to do some work. She had to jump through some hoops to get her Social Security updated, to get her driver's license updated. She ended up, we went on a foreign trip. We had to get passports. She had, in addition to birth certificate for the passport, she had to provide the marriage license. Republicans are desperate. No, Democrat, you don't seem to care. Rural people, they'll have to drive to the county courthouse. Or the government can set up things on weekends where they do outreach, which they doubtedly would, and Democrats will be there trying to help them. When you protest this sort of stuff, and you say, this is just, you're trying to, take away people's right to vote, this isn't difficult. This really isn't difficult. And I guess the Democratic Party is the party of stupid people who can't figure this out. This is not a new thing. Seriously. In a lot of blue states, they have bizarre rules that are designed to increase the vote, and they don't care too much about whether or not they're legal votes or the integrity of the ballot box. They really don't care. Here in California, back in 2016, they passed called a ballot harvesting law. In California, the law says voters have 4 options to return their ballot. They can mail it, return it in person to an election center, put it in an official drop box operated by their county, or give it to someone else to return for them. That last one is where the problem is. It can be anybody. And there's not always a whole lot of guarantee that the person, if that person in that Walmart parking lot when I was 21 years old and voting outside of the San Diego County area for the first time, if she's standing there, I'll take your ballot, and she finds me, commenting about how I think George H.W. Bush is a great president, toss it. I wouldn't trust a person like that, but, they do these ballot harvesting. It's sketchy. And note down here what I've got highlighted. just above that. The law says people who return the ballots for others must print on the ballot their name, state their relationship to the voter, and sign it. They must return the ballot within 3 days of receiving it. However, the ballots will still be counted even if the collector does not sign them or keeps them for longer than 3 days, as long as they are otherwise filled out correctly and returned by election day. There is no limit on the number of ballots a harvester can return. I'm sorry, that's sketchy as all get out. It is. Why are we concerned about this stuff? This just came out past couple weeks. Columbia National convicted of voter fraud, federal benefit fraud, and identity theft offenses. This is in Massachusetts. Defendant voted in the 2024 presidential election under a stolen identity, lived under a stolen identity for more than 20 years, obtained a real ID. How that happened, I have no idea. Because the real ID is supposed to require a birth certificate and other, stuff to back it up, which I had to have. I got one. Improperly received more than $400,000 in stolen federal benefits over those 20 years. I mean, that's... You see why we're worried. Up in Minnesota, this kind of became an issue recently when people found out about it. Minnesota has a vouching voting system that's more secure than other states' top election official says. Which, of course, he's going to say. He's a Democrat. This is Secretary of State Steve Simon. I found this kind of explanation interesting. He explained how the law works in practice. It says to register in Minnesota, you need to show two things. Who you are who you say you are, that's identity, and you live where you say you live, that's residence. So what you use vouching for is really the residence part. That's where it's used most commonly. It's used in places like assisted living homes. It's used in situations where someone just moved in September and October and they might not have an ID or paper showing their address. And then this example. My own father, in the 1998 gubernatorial election, was vouched for because my parents downsized. They moved to a condo. They didn't yet have a utility bill or other means of showing that they live where they live. Well, if they moved to a condo, if they bought the condo, you've got the deed and the mortgage, maybe the mortgage documents, but you've got the closing papers showing that you bought the place. If you rented it, you've got a rental agreement. I know in California, both those things will work. At least they work for buying. The thing is, that's the other thing that's interesting nowadays in the rhetoric surrounding this. This is requiring this ID, requiring you to prove this sort of stuff is an infringement on a fundamental right. You have to do all of this and more to buy a gun. The vast majority of blue states. They put on these requirements and more if you want to purchase a gun. In California, you gotta show up with a car registration or a utility bill or whatnot when you go to pick up your gun, after you've waited 10 days. They're fine with that. In fact, they encourage that and more. They want to pile more on that fundamental. But voting, no. And then, again, I'm starting to get the feeling that Democrats are cheating. Why would I believe that? Because Virginia, they just introduced a bill that would ban ICE from being within 40 feet of a polling place. Because they want illegal aliens to be able to freely go in and cast a ballot? I'm sorry. This sort of rhetoric and behavior, it's like, methinks she doth protest too much. No, we're all for just having citizens vote. I'm not so sure about that. I mean, that maybe you'll be patient with all of these, people you illegally let in over the Biden term, when you let the border wide open. Hey, come in, fill it, do an app on your phone and you can come in, and Oh, and now the rhetoric is, oh, we need to provide a pathway to citizenship for these people. No, we don't. They aren't here legally. They aren't here legally. Anyways, I'll continue to follow this. I'm not sure the SAVE Act's going to get passed. I know there's a effort here in California to require voter ID. That's a part of a citizen-led initiative. I'm not sure it'll make the ballot. I'm sure if it does make the ballot, that our current Secretary of State will put attach language to it to make it seem as nefarious as possible, so that low information voters vote against it. But don't have a whole lot of confidence. But ladies and gentlemen, thanks for coming. Thanks for watching the show. I appreciate it. Kept this one under 25 minutes. I'm going to try and get them shorter. I am. Please follow me on Substack, follow me on X, Facebook, whatnot. Watch those shorts. Tell your friends about it. More people I get watching, the more possibility this turns into something I can do full time and get paid for, because that's really what kind of my goal is. So thanks for coming, and I'll see you soon.